its land area with a population of approximately 1.3 billion Africans. Africa is bigger than all of Europe, China, and the United States of America combined, since the area of Europe is approximately 10.18 million square kilometers. So if you get China and the United States and you combine them, they can't beat Africa. It's unless when you get China and combine the other Asia, because Asia is the largest continent in the world. It's a diverse continent with different ethnic groups of people speaking so many different languages, characterized with different traditions and cultures, together with customs that every culture or every ethnic group abides to. By the 1900s, a significant part of Africa was colonized by mainly 7 European powers: Britain, Germany, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, and Italy, for the sole purpose of domination, socially, economically, and economic exploitation of this colonized African society, of which became a success. Because once these colonial masters came through into the country, everything that they wanted to happened. They managed to colonize us, they managed to control our social well-being, they changed our mentality towards development, they changed everything ours, to the fact that the latest, I think the last part where they wanted to touch was the culture. And that has been ongoing with the new generation, that every generation that comes in adopts the Western style of culture. So this is where the Europeans or the European colonialists wanted us, and that is where they had put us. Africa is naturally gifted with abundant natural resources right from the ground. On the surface and on the sky, like favorable climate, being one of the reasons that called for colonization of Africa by the European powers. Africa holds resources from human resource to 33% of the diamond reserve, 40% of global gold reserves, 80% of the global coltan, phones electronic making mineral. Then there is what we call the reserve of mainly, that is found in Democratic Republic of Congo. Africa also has sugar, salt, iron ore, cobalt, uranium, copper, petroleum, food crops, wood, 60% arable land, and has 90% of raw material reserves. Africa is rich in oil and natural gases. If you're to look at this, the author says it is a fact that Africa is underpopulated since it has only 1.3 billion inhabitants, despite having 30.37 billion square kilometers. China has 1.4 billion inhabitants out of the 9.6 million square kilometers. So you can only imagine, China is not a continent, it's just a country. Africa is culturally diverse continent in terms of dancing, music, architecture, and sculpture, as it accommodates 30,000 medicinal recipes and herbs than the West. This leads us to a question as to why Africa is poor, despite the fact that it holds the largest percentage of depots of the world's natural resources. So why are we poor? This is where we are in reason as the world's masterpiece. And the author starts off, that was just a preamble of chapter 5 was just a preamble of chapter 6. Then chapter 6, the author themes it as colonialism. If you ever look at the reason as to why we are here, or we are actually carrying out various economic activities, and even when you look at how the way we are carrying out with the nature of business in Africa, it was all set in place by the colonialists. They managed to budget, if I could say, and put us into their driving post. It's just like when someone wants to change your mindset, and the only way to change your mindset is to actually put you in a situation where you cannot. Have you ever been in a situation where you can never survive the outcome of anything, and someone puts you into that driving angle? That is where Africa was put by the colonialists. Let's follow on. God created man, life, and the universe. It is said that economically, there are limited resources to satisfy man's unlimited wants. And economics is basically, by definition, the use of limited resources, and which might be at an individual level, depending on society, nation, or even continent. By the early 1800s, it was claimed that there were limited natural resources, hence limitation in the survival of the Europeans, which forced them. You see, when the Europeans realized that they have limited resources, they set out to explore for resources, later resulting into the colonization and exploitation of Africa. Because they realized that if you look at the prevailing conditions in Europe, most of their success can be attributed to most of their colonial activities that they carried on in Africa while they visited Africa. Because one would still think that the Europeans were very strategic. They knew what they wanted. And if someone knows what they want, at the end of the day, it means they can actually go into anything, or they can actually go into any other situation. So that is where we're looking into that these Europeans realize tikati fe tetukyalina source z'ebintu ebisinga. Wewegendereze nnyo ojja kwekanganga nti bwe bategeera nti Africa erabika erina ebyobugagga bingi, bakizuula nti balina okuexploringa Africa eno. Ate engeri gye bakitegeeramu kiri bwe kiti nti abazungu bagenda okujja mu society yaffe, and this is where we look at the social. Africa lost all its social structures at the time of the start of colonial African societies already. Abazungu bagenda ne bategeera society eno, sookera ddala ne basooka batuvugira mu religion. So they realized Africans have to first be put in a side whereby you're victimized. Ne batukwata ne batugamba nti kakati this is right and this is wrong. Kati mu situation eyo ovanga ku muntu ajjeewo n'agamba enkoko eno nno si nnungi eri obulamu bwo naye nga yaagirya, okitegeera. Then they got us in a situation where we are too naive to the point that twakkirizanga ebisinga, si byonna twakkirizanga ebisinga to their advantage. It was not until as generations grow up, abantu batandika otegeera ne bagamba nti bano abasajja bano balabika balina kye batwagaza, and if you're to follow up ojja kwekanganga they were too late. That they were too late for that, because abazungu bali bamaze okujjamu otunulira ensi ezimu bali bamaze okujjamu gold and what have you. But if you look at some of the countries like South Africa, by the time they got independence in 1994, the country had already been so developed by the whites, and it was actually very rare to find the colonialists helping out in the development of the country, because mainly they centered in the capitals. Now, according to the author, we equally have African countries like Egypt and Ethiopia that don't necessarily use the English alphabet. We have other countries like China that are more developed than our former colonial masters, despite the fact that they retain their ancient strong Chinese customs. So when you look at the other issue, according to the author, is that in the social aspect, we have forgotten about our norms and culture. We have adopted the way of living of the Europeans because we were put into that mindset thinking that ours is not right. Our cultures are backward, our cultures are evil. Kugamba omuntu wakuteekamu eyo mentality, ekintu ky'okuliddemu ng'olina essanyu n'agamba si kirungi, n'akuwa ekirala nga kirina essanyu naye nga tekirina ebizibu ebijjirako, naawe otandika okirowoozamu n'ogamba nti but there was something not right here. When you look at China has very few people who speak English. China has most of the people, they have their national language is Chinese, and they tend to boost their cultures. You've seen Chinese movies. They are set in a Chinese format where nolaba zi temple, nolaba ba Shaolin kwegamba ye yengeri gye bakulamu. Even the advancement in technology hasn't made them shatter all that. It is here in Africa or even in Uganda where you find tutunuulira ebyobuwangwa nennono ng'omuntu agamba ebyo biri outdated tebirina mugaso tubijjewo to be modernizing. It is okay to modernize, but when you're modernizing or putting things into a technology setup, put them in a collection which still safeguards the culture and norms and represents who you are as a person. So socially, we as Africa were totally defeated. We adopted a culture that wasn't meant to be ours. I would put that straight because we adopted a culture that wasn't supposed to be ours and we embraced it. That is why a generation like this that is filled with social media, it has become so hard for someone to motivate or to actually come up to set a generation right, because the generation feels they have to follow what they see on social media. People no longer care about their roots. People don't care about where they come from. They don't want to even feel attached to the tradition. They feel when they tell you tradition, and in most cases you'll find out that some of the religious leaders will even tell you if you get attached to a tradition, you're evil. So that is where we are. And like I said, normally you would see if someone has actually put you in their position, they would say, ati abazungu batuteka we batwagala awo wetuli we batwagala. Manyi waliwo omuntu akuteka mu position nga wakwagalira ddala n'okola ebintu byonna n'agamba awo wennyini we mwagala oyo, when you don't even have a sense of direction. Let me reserve some of the comments anyway. Let's look at the economy part of it. Colonialism, how did it affect our economy? Before colonialism, the African societies were trading through barter trade, where the modern currency of exchange were goods for goods. Give me a book, I give you a pen. Give me juice, give me mangoes, I give you pineapples. Look at that mode. I think it is one of the most amazing. Imagine a situation where you would say, you need a phone, I give you a suit, you give me a phone. I give you a car, you give me an aeroplane. I give you a ship, you give me a piece of land. So away from that, there existed trade, and it was transformational, as some of these societies later had upgraded to cowrie shells. So they realized as time went by, the societies realized that barter trade looks a bit unfair, because sometimes someone would give you this small cup and they want, let's say, a television screen. That is quite unfair. So they realized that if they used cowrie shells as distribution, if you did your history right, you remember the transition of exchange of goods for services and how money got into the picture in Africa. Maybe at a later stage, we would have traded our oils, gold and diamond to these European countries at a fair trading deals rather than the forceful takeover through colonialism. Because now the issue was, when these people realized that the only way they can exploit us was to come, rule us, impose their taxes, impose their policies, impose their culture onto us, and once we adopt and trapped, they can exploit everything. And the sad part is, it was always the Africans who are helping in the mining process to even lift and do the loading. Anyway, the day colonialism came to Africa was the day Africa lost its natural path to reasonable development, hence the reason for the widespread poverty in Africa today as compared to other continents. That is according to the author. That the day colonialism came in Africa, I've been mentioning the fact that we lost our natural path, and the natural path here is we lost our direction. We are living in a life because we are used to what we see other continents doing. When you see this is happening in the UK, that is what some person else will actually bring here in Uganda, and they say, we need to do this as well. And when someone does something that is so original in Uganda, people shun away from that. People stop supporting them. So you can only imagine how people are fighting their own tradition and looking at the other countries. The author finalizes chapter 6 saying, Europeans didn't did not only colonize Africa then, but rather colonialism made Africans direct subjects of the colonial masters. They colonized the present, erased the past, and were to determine the future of Africa. And if you look at what is happening now, they colonized what is happening here now in what by then was seen as the future. Then they erased the past, what we could look at. If you're to trace your past now, it becomes hard for you. And they are to determine the future of Africa. The future that you're dreaming of, we're looking at what the Europeans think of what we're supposed to do. That is why even if in Africa we have rich people, they will come out and tell you in the top 10 rich people, they are not there. Or in the next 10 years, they will actually give you an estimation that Africa, this country may be broke by this time. Joking. Anyway, and Africa is poor today, not because we are not working enough, but simply because it's the desire of our former colonial masters. Africa is not poor, it is simply overexploited. And the exploitation takes each one of us. If we say the exploitation takes each one of us, is because all of us make up Africa. And if you look at that, and we try to change this, a lot will change. When we do return with the book review, we shall be looking at chapter 7, which tackles education. It has played a very big part in our mentality. So if you look at education in Uganda, we have formal and informal, not only in Uganda, but in Africa. This education, as we are winding up, the author says, I personally define education as the learning process or systems designed to teach one the means, the tools, or the principles necessary to successfully carry out a certain duty or achieve a certain goal. Education may be formal or informal. And if you look at the formal education, this is the kind of education we get from formally organized systems like schools, institutions, technical institutions, army training colleges, and the likes. These usually have levels, stages, courses, and qualifications. Degree, certificate, diploma, undergraduate, bachelor's, you've heard of all that, masters, and what have you. The informal education, this is the kind of education we gain from day-to-day life experience, right from when we are born until we die. And informal education can actually reap more if you get it and add it onto the formal education. The formal African education systems were introduced by their former colonial masters, meaning they are foreign education structures and systems and not indigenous. So as we are winding up with that, that was chapter 7. So when we return, we shall head to chapter 8, which is showing limitations. Are you limiting yourself? Is there something you can actually do that you don't want to do and calling it a limitation? Well, that is what we shall be discussing. Reason as the World is Masterpiece from Hamis Kiggundu is what we've been having. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko. If you look at the situations happening, you will agree that most of them are affiliated to our reasoning capacity and our mindset towards that. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko. With the book review, we pick things. We trash some, but I hope you pick something as well, because trashing is not good.